He has always lived in the past and will always live in the future. A change in a story. Therefore, it would be reasonable for us to say that the story of Gautama Buddha falls into the category of a legend. Judaism, the Torah, the law, the writings and the prophets are divided now into 39 books with so many different authors living at vastly different periods of history. Some writings to me appeared questionable in the sense of historicity, others were accurately historical. I didn't go into much detail at that point because I was hoping to put them into one classification. I could not. So I left the Judaic writing unclassified as to this point. There are other ways in which you can look at it, but for this moment, I just left it unclassified. Islam, the Quran was put together in writing by 652 CE, Common Era, within 20 years of Muhammad's life. So just about the same generation. Only some changes in the text are accepted by scholars. I am being liberal in the sense that actually there were questions. There were variant readings during the third caliphate, which means the third ruler after Muhammad. And his name is Uthman, he ordered that it be consolidated into one with the help of some excellent scholars. So he called them and they made the present day Quran. The unfortunate thing we find is that he ordered all the other manuscripts and readings destroyed. So in one sense, we cannot really go back to see what was there from which the present Quran has been brought together. However, it was within the lifetime or one generation of Muhammad, and therefore we have to acknowledge that it is most probably and should give it the classification of historical piece of literature. Christianity, the earliest manuscript we have, is dated about 114 to 134 AD in the John Rylands library in UK. The original manuscripts were written within 20 to 50 years of the life of Jesus. And this is the New Testament writings. Sir William Ramsay was another archaeologist, a British archaeologist, who was also doing his archaeological work at that same period of time. He had discarded the New Testament and was doing his digs when he came across some very perplexing situations, and he consulted one document after another. And finally, out of thinking that maybe the New Testament might help him, he went to Luke, the book of Acts. And there he found statements that cleared his perplexity. This happened over and over again. And over a period of 30 years, he found that Luke was stating some things that were accurate. And this is what he wrote about Luke. Luke's history is unsurpassed in respect of its trustworthiness. This author should be placed along with the very greatest of historians, not religious historians, very greatest of historians. Norman Geisler, one of Christianity's apologists, says this: in all, Luke names 32 countries, 54 cities, 9 islands without a single error. This is unusual when it comes to mythological and legendary stories. So with these features, we can recognize that the New Testament has very high credibility of being a historical piece of literature. So what I did next was compare that to other pieces that were written about the same time, which everyone knows is historical. Nobody controverts that. For example, Caesar's Gallic Wars, Herodotus' history, Tacitus' Annals. You can go to any of the universities and the departments of history and get your MAs and your PhDs by quoting these authors. They are considered to be historical writings. But look at the gaps. Caesar's Gallic Wars was written in 100 BC, and the earliest manuscript we have is 900 AD, a gap of 1,000 years. In other words, for 1,000 years, so many generations, nobody can vouch that anything was added, deleted, changed. Similarly, Herodotus' history, 1,300 years. Tacitus' annals, 1,000 years. This is millennium, not just century. So if we are willing to accept these huge gaps and still retain the credibility of these writings, then why should we not accept this gap? If 1,000 years was okay, then 20 to 50 and even 10 years should be much better. In other words, when you look at historical pieces of literature, the gaps tell you the level of credibility. And look at this. The New Testament certainly is a very high credibility when it comes to the gaps. There are another two features we look at for historical credibility. And the second one is the number of manuscripts. You see, if there are just 4 or 5 manuscripts that back the writing, then one night you and I maybe might make a plan and go and change some parts in each of those 4 or 5 manuscripts. And in the morning, nobody would know that we have changed because it's changed in all of them. And we have corrupted the text. Whereas that if there are 50 or 100 manuscripts spread out here and there and everywhere, it is difficult to go and change details in all of them. So if we find that the number of manuscripts is large, it raises the credibility. The lower the number of manuscripts, well, the more questionable, although it doesn't have to be. But it certainly is that one that has a high number of manuscripts is the more credible. So with that, let's look at these writings. Caesar's Gallic Wars is based on 10 manuscripts worldwide. Herodotus' history, 8 manuscripts worldwide. Tacitus' Annals, 20 manuscripts worldwide. The one that has the highest number in Greek literature is Homer's Iliad. Homer's Iliad is based on 643 manuscripts. Very impressive, right? Compared to the 8 and 20 and 10, 643 is amazing, impressive. What if I tell you that the New Testament is based on 664 manuscripts? Well, that would take the top spot, right? And like we said, when there's something impressive, we will have to say, wow, that's impressive. Do you know really how many manuscripts back the New Testament? It's not 664, it's 5,664. And that is Greek manuscripts. If you add the Armenian and the Arabic and the Latin and put them all together, the total number of manuscripts that back the New Testament is 24,900. So with these two features, gap, small. Number of manuscripts, by far the most. We will have to agree that we are leaning towards the idea that the New Testament is definitely historical in nature.